The trove of 3 million Jeffrey Epstein documents published online by the US Department of Justice continues to yield increasingly shocking revelations about the dead sex trafficker billionaire's links to the very rich and the even more powerful. Today we've had yet another suggestion, and one that hits close to home. This is Prince Andrew biographer Andrew Lowney speaking to Daily Mail journalist Sarah Vine, who also happens to be the ex-wife of former Tory minister Michael Gove.
I've heard of all sorts of threesomes, including a threesome with Ghislaine and a British Prime Minister.
Oh, my goodness. A recent British Prime Minister?
A former British Prime Minister. It's not Winston Churchill.
Oh, my goodness. OK, fine. OK, well, I think the lawyers would cut that out if we went any further on that.
Now, Lowney doesn't say who the third participant in that threesome was alleged to be. Lowney, however, did go a little further on Talk TV.
But let's start with that shocking revelation that you came out with in the last few days, implying, and I quote, that somewhere in the files there will come to pass the information that a past British Prime Minister, and I can't, children's ears, had a threesome with Jeffrey Epstein and a call girl. I mean, one begs to, I'm not going to, I'm just going to say, how shocking more is this story going to get?
Well, I think it has still some way to go. I mean, I've known about the story about the former Prime Minister for some time, but I see that actually it is in the files. There is a release there. People don't seem to have picked it up, but actually there's an FBI correspondence discussing it. So I'm sure that name will eventually appear.
I don't know what to say. Sorry, it wasn't it was with Ghislaine Maxwell, just to put it all into, is what it says here with Ghislaine Maxwell. There we go.
Now, we haven't been able to find the document that Lowney is talking about in that clip, but Lowney is also vague enough that it isn't clear whether he's talking about someone who had a threesome with Epstein and Maxwell while Prime Minister or someone who became Prime Minister after the Sex Act. Now, we know that Ghislaine Maxwell met Epstein sometime in the 1990s in New York. In 1996, a young woman called Maria Farmer reported Epstein and Maxwell to the FBI, saying they'd abused her younger sister Annie a year earlier. At that time, Maxwell was in her early 30s, around a decade since she graduated from Oxford. Here's where it gets really interesting. The earliest sex act between Epstein, Maxwell, and a future or past Prime Minister could have taken place probably around then. So we're thinking mid-1990s. But while at Oxford, Maxwell had connections to at least 2 future Prime Ministers. This is the iconic 1987 Bullingdon Club photograph showing the members of the infamously posh and destructive drinking club. Second from the left in the top row is David Cameron, and first from the bottom of those seated is Boris Johnson. Boris Johnson and Ghislaine Maxwell both attended Balliol College. According to Johnson's sister, Rachel, she once walked into the college's junior common room to see Ghislaine Maxwell holding court, her high-heeled boot resting on the future PM's thigh. Johnson has never discussed his relationship with Maxwell. David Cameron was at Oxford at the same time too, though his college was Brasenose. And Cameron is mentioned several times in the Epstein files, though there is no correspondence directly between him and Jeffrey Epstein. In fact, this is a piece of advice Epstein gave Peter Mandelson while he was a minister in Gordon Brown's government. It's sent a few months before the 2010 election that put the Conservative Lib Dem coalition into government. From Jeffrey Epstein to Peter Mandelson, you need to go after David Cameron and not the party. Chop off the head, if you can. In experience, the last thing the country needs is an untested captain. The rough waters are going to need seasoned hands. Did you take B3? We think that's about vitamin B3, but anyway, it could be code, who knows. Now, in making these connections, we're not suggesting any wrongdoing. We have literally no idea who Lowney is referring to. But the relationships do show, I think at least, the kind of elite British contacts that Ghislaine Maxwell had access to and that she brought with her when she paired up with Jeffrey Epstein. So I think Lowney is right. There's a lot more to come from these files, with a lot of the British establishment probably feeling pretty on edge. But right now, Ghislaine isn't talking. Maxwell, who's been sentenced to 20 years in prison for sex trafficking, appeared before the US House Oversight Committee yesterday. They didn't get very far.
Ms. Maxwell, were you a close friend and confidant of Jeffrey Epstein?
I would like to answer your question, but on the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer this question and any related questions. My habeas petition is pending in the Southern District of New York. I therefore invoke my right to silence under the Fifth Amendment to the U.S. Constitution.
Let the record reflect that Ms. Maxwell has invoked the Fifth Amendment against self-incrimination. Ms. Maxwell, please be very clear. Are you declining to answer the question put to you solely on the ground that you believe the answer will incriminate you?
I invoke my Fifth Amendment right to silence.
Maxwell pled the Fifth on every question put to her, but her answers may yet come, though at a price. Through a lawyer, Maxwell has now said she will answer the House's questions openly and honestly in exchange for clemency from US President Donald Trump. And her lawyer sweetened Maxwell's offer to Trump with this. If this committee and the American public truly want to hear the unfiltered truth about what happened, there is a straightforward path. Ms. Maxwell is prepared to speak fully and honestly if granted clemency by President Trump. Presumably a reduced sentence. Only she can provide the complete account. Some may not like what they hear, but the truth matters. For example, both President Trump and President Clinton are innocent of any wrongdoing. Ms. Maxwell alone can explain why, and the public is entitled to that explanation. I'll get back to that in a moment, Kieran. But on the UK angle here, I mean, I think a lot of people are looking at the emphasis on Britain's role in this saga. It is a saga, it's an ongoing thing, isn't it? Prince Andrew over many years, now more recently Peter Mandelson. And that's not an accident. Some people think that's partly about the Americans trying to deflect all the scandal onto this side of the Atlantic. But Ghislaine Maxwell, if people were watching that clip just a moment ago and listening to how she speaks, was very much a central figure within the British establishment, not least because of who her father was. And as Richard said earlier on, she was the Sloane Ranger par excellence. There's a certain character type in British public life, and she was the Queen Bee. So it does kind of feel that for Brits and British politicians in particular, there's a lot more to come.
Yeah, and I think that's the real story. I think the threesome, the details of the threesome are ultimately secondary in all of this. I think actually the point of this story is exactly what you just said, which is that it is about elites, transnational elites, transatlantic elites, mixing together, and in this case, a future prime minister mixing with somebody who obviously held the kind of lifestyle that Jeffrey Epstein held, and the sort of the salacious details at the corners of that are kind of irrelevant when it's about threesomes and adults and so on. What is relevant is that ultimately this was either back then or became a highly sophisticated international sex trafficking and paedophile ring. And for a British Prime Minister to have cavorted with those kinds of people, to have slept with those kinds of people, to have mixed with those kinds of people, and to have come from, if the people we think are responsible to have come from the same schools as these people, tells us a great deal about the ways in which power circulates and those networks operate.
Yeah. I mean, you saw Jeremy Kyle sort of, wow, really? There's a threesome? But the more you learn about who this person is, Ghislaine Maxwell, where she comes from, the more you learn about her father. I mean, it's the most predictable thing in the world, isn't it? This is the least of it. And it's not a shocking revelation. I think it happens a lot more than they want us to even consider possible.